Good afternoon, everyone. I figure we start here. A little story. Growing up as a kid, if you grew up like me, Saturday mornings were everything. We had the smell of bacon, eggs, and grits coming from the kitchen as mom cooked. The sound of R&B music coming from outside as dad fixed his cars or even did yard work. And ultimately, the highly anticipated moments when my older brother and I would cram ourselves in front of that floor model television, which was weighed like 200 pounds, on Saturday mornings just to watch those Saturday morning cartoons. What great memories these are. Each week we tuned in to watch our strong, skilled, highly competent, highly confident, and capable and efficient superheroes battle villains and other enemies, predominantly ending up triumphant most of the time. But every now and then, our favorite superheroes would have to struggle with a different enemy themselves. More of an internal battle, which they would have to find the courage, muster up the resilience and the strength to overcome this battle. You remember that internal conflict where they depicted on one shoulder an angelic character, whispering to our heroes, "You got this. You can do it. You're amazing. Go for it." Then on the other shoulder, they would have that devilish character saying, screaming actually, "You're a fraud. You're not good enough. Quit while you're ahead before you're exposed." Now, some of you may be asking yourselves, what are you talking about, Rich? Characters, angels, bacon, eggs? Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm here to share my research and perspective on the phenomenon that many high-achieving individuals struggle with, either openly or behind closed doors. I'm confident by the end of this discussion, those in leadership grappling with any self-doubt will leave with simple yet practical strategies that will begin to either mitigate and eventually dismantle these feelings of inadequacy. These strategies will not only foster confidence and professional growth, but will also have invaluable impact on the overall culture and progression of an organization and companies in which we are leading. So let's get started. Let me ask this question. What do you think would make successful influencers like Tom Hanks, Michelle Obama, Emma Watson, Viola Davis, COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, what would make them doubt themselves? I mean, take a look at their track records. Look at all the success and achievements they've accrued, either in their professional and personal lives. What could possibly make or cause Nobel winner and American poet Maya Angelou openly state, "I have written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find me out. I've run game on everyone, and this time they're going to find me out." Ladies and gentlemen, the answer is imposter syndrome. Simply put, imposter syndrome is when high-achieving individuals, for this context, such as organizational leaders, frequently experience feelings of inadequacy or even fraudulence within their positions. And despite proven success, no matter how much success they have, how many achievements, they constantly and consistently struggle with self-doubt, fear of failure, perfectionism, and an inability to internalize their own achievements. In most cases, they simply attribute their success to luck rather than their own ability or skills. You see, let's go back to 1978, to the campus of Georgia State University, where two psychologists, Pauline Clarence and Dr. Suzanne Imes, who both struggled with imposter feelings, collaborated and conducted qualitative and quantitative research on 178 accomplished women across several professions. Their main goal was to explore the psychological characteristics and experiences of these individuals, with what was then known as the imposter phenomenon. Clarence and Imes studies significantly contribute to our now understanding of imposter syndrome and shed light on its prevalence, its impact, and its underlying psychological mechanisms. Ultimately, their findings underscore the importance of addressing imposter syndrome for individuals and leaders' mental health and well-being. They also advocated for interventions and support and systems to help individuals recognize and overcome these feelings of inadequacy. So today, we're not going to so much talk about what imposter syndrome is and get into the historical context. We're going to talk about how imposter syndrome creates barriers to effective leadership and confident leadership. And we're also going to explore some ways that we can mitigate and dismantle these symptoms. Confidence, bravado, swagger, all these words are central attributes to possess when leading others, especially in professional settings. That bravado of self-assurance will allow leaders to represent stability during ambiguous and uncertain times. Leaders are often under constant pressure to meet expectations, provide employee feedback, manage conflicts. Therefore, exhibiting authentic poise when making important decisions can be a crucial leadership quality. Listen, there's a variety of common traits such as authenticity, competence, vulnerability that make a great leader. However, confidence consistently emerges as one of those foundational attributes. So just as confident leaders can foster trust and safety for their organizations, leadership's void of self-belief can have extremely harmful and detrimental effects that negatively impact the overall health of the organization and also the leader. Let's get into some of these barriers that it creates. Number one is just a lack of growth. Leaders who struggle with imposter syndrome fall into that trap of being risk adverse. This avoidance in taking risks comes from their fear of failure and being exposed and from their internalization as being frauds. With the inability to take calculated risks, they struggle with pursuing innovative strategies and also stifle the growth within an organization. They stifle creativity, not only within themselves, within team members and others around them. This inhibits organizational adaptability and growth. On top of that, motivation and trust get railroaded in just a big blockage. Psychological safety is important, highly imperative in all companies and organizations. When you have a leader that has the ability to create a safe space, you create team members or even subordinates that are willing to take more risk and aren't afraid of failing. However, leaders who lack that confidence due to imposter syndrome often struggle with the ability to inspire and motivate others. Their personal self-doubts can undermine their authority and credibility while leading others. And this leads to diminished trust and also respect from ones in which they are leading. Overall organizational culture. The pervasive culture of imposter syndrome among leaders can permeate through the entire organization. If a leader has these doubts and insecurities, you're creating an overall atmosphere of doubt and insecurity, an unsafe environment, toxicity. Oftentimes, when you have this creates a culture of inconsistency, low morale, lack of productivity, limit organizational growth. Imposter syndrome can translate into ineffective communication, also delegation of tasks, low conflict resolution, and ultimately all this does is hinder team cohesion and collaboration. So overall, in a nutshell, what I'm talking about is the culture. The leader's inability to create due to their own personal deficiencies will trickle down to your organization. Okay, so we've highlighted just a few of the pain points that leadership lacking in confidence from imposter syndrome can have on an organization and its detrimental effects that can have on the overall growth of an organization. For the rest of the time we have together, I want to share some key strategies for leaders who are struggling that can partake in on an individual level, and also how organizations as a whole can support their leaders that may be struggling or grappling with imposter syndrome. Let's talk about self-awareness and how it can mitigate some of these symptoms to imposter syndrome. Sometimes our emotional intelligence and ability to reflect within to see what we may be projecting outwards is highly underrated, in my opinion. In my opinion, emotional intelligence, which is the ability to look within to kind of recognize some of our outward projections, is highly underrated, especially in leadership. So, one way to mitigate symptoms and manifestations of imposter syndrome on an individual level is simply to be self-aware, to embrace these feelings, understand these feelings, and partake in mindfulness activities. As leaders engage in mindfulness activities, it turns our fixed mindset into more of the growth-centered mindset. And it gives us a better understanding of the importance to modify our behaviors. As you partake in these mindfulness activities, just centering yourself and being more conscious of the now, you're able to track your progress, assess some of your results, and have a better opportunity to internalize our wins. That is another way to get past these barriers that created by imposter syndrome, is to be able to celebrate your success. Let's talk about some techniques that individuals who grapple with imposter syndrome can take part in effective immediately to begin to mitigate some of the symptoms or manifestations of imposter syndrome. Self-awareness seems simple, right? However, many people, often in leadership positions, neglect or even undervalue the importance of emotional intelligence. So focused on IQ, that inability to look within to recognize your outward projections often get overlooked. So just simply being aware of mindfulness and self-awareness is the first start to mitigating some of these symptoms, some of these behaviors, some of these triggers for imposter syndrome. One of the ways that leaders can partake in some of these things is journaling and reflection. Leaders who engage in journaling and reflective practices to explore their thoughts and their feelings and other experiences related to imposter syndrome, writing down their thoughts and reflecting on them can help leaders gain more insight into the patterns and behaviors and thinking and develop more balanced perspectives. That's the integration piece. Understanding the Townsend model for character competencies, the character structure with attachment, with separation, with integration, and with adulthood. Just that understanding. Visualization and imagery. Leaders can use visualization and imagery techniques to create mental images and gain confidence in that competence by just imagining themselves overcoming these challenges and achieving their goals and understanding how great they truly are. They can build confidence and reduce these feelings of self-doubt. All this stuff seems to be overlooked. This is the stuff that we tell our children. This is the stuff that we tell our children in the schools. Believe it and you can achieve it. The same thing goes for us adults. The same thing goes for us adults. By incorporating these mindfulness techniques into our daily routines, leaders can develop better self-awareness, more resilience, more confidence, ultimately dissolving the effects and behaviors of imposter syndrome, while also enhancing their personal leadership effectiveness. Have you ever heard the phrase, "it takes a village"? They say it takes a village to raise a child. And that collective concept, that collective thought, that collective community of people rallying around one person full of support. Leaders need support as well, right? So there's things that organizations can do to support their leaders that they know are battling or struggling with imposter syndrome or the effects of imposter syndrome. Number one is education and awareness. Companies, organizations should provide training and workshops to raise awareness about imposter syndrome and its prevalence. When you feel like you're on an island by yourself and you're the only one struggling with this, you're going to be scared or hesitant to raise your hand about certain things and say, "I am struggling." Not that many leaders have that vulnerability because they think it undermines their competence. And in some cases, it does. So when we educate our leaders and employees about the common signs and symptoms, and as well as the negative impact it can have on the individuals and organizational performance, that just overall brings a collective awareness. We talked about the individual awareness, but now that brings a collective awareness to what imposter syndrome is. As this happens and empathy and understanding and grows, it creates a supportive culture, an environment of safety where people can say, hey, I'm not perfect. When an organizational culture that encourages open communication and vulnerability, it creates a supportive environment where leaders feel comfortable enough discussing their feelings of self-doubt and seeking help without the fear of judgment or that stigma that may be attached to that. You know, different things like mentorship or coaching programs. Establish these mentorship programs and these coaching programs within the organization to provide your leaders with different guidance and support from educated professionals. Pair their leaders struggling with imposter syndrome with mentors that can offer reassurance, highlight their bright spots, celebrate their victories, provide perspective and encouragement. Does this sound familiar? Townsend Institute students, the relational nutrients, the quadrants. Also, organizations and cultures that have professional development opportunities where leaders can enhance their skills and their knowledge through training. This will build that confidence, whether it be workshops, developmental programs, that leadership empowerment to expand their expertise, grow their confidence, and this will become contagious, a learning mindset, the growth mindset. Consistent recognition and feedback, constructive feedback and recognition of leadership for their achievements and contributions. Success scoreboard. You did great as a leader. Leaders need to hear that they're doing great as well, especially those struggling with feelings of fraudulence. With that little devilish guy on the shoulder saying, you are a fraud, you are going to be exposed. You know, leaders often experience burnout and stress and overwhelm. So to be able to have a leader who is vulnerable enough and has a supportive environment, you gotta will ultimately affect the overall culture of an organization. As you remember, leadership starts from the top. However, those at the bottom can definitely uplift their leader for their own benefit, for the benefit of the organization and growth. This is very important to me. If anything I said before is, it is okay to normalize failure and imperfections. Organizational cultures that foster normalization of failure and view it as just an opportunity for growth and learning. This leadership encourages those leaders and individuals to embrace their setbacks, not as mistakes, but as opportunities and valuable experience that will effectively contributing to their development and their resilience. If an organization is willing to implement these supportive measures, you can help your leader who's struggling with imposter syndrome and self-doubt, enhance their confidence, and be able to thrive within their roles. Ultimately, this benefits both the leaders and the organizations as a whole. So today, ladies and gentlemen, if you are struggling with imposter syndrome, if you're struggling with fears of inadequacy or not being good enough or being exposed as a fraud, I'm here to tell you, my own personal journey with imposter syndrome has been difficult, but the more and more I embrace it, I step up to the plate and say, hey, these are just one of my deficiencies. And we're working towards dismantling it completely. It gets easier. There is hope. You're not alone. Some of your greatest influencers, some of your greatest leaders, some of your greatest mentors have all struggled with these feelings. But it takes a brave individual to confront it and say, hey, I'm struggling in this area. I am good enough, and let's get help. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this TED Talk inspirational. I hope you found it transformational. If you are struggling with imposter syndrome, look within. You have some personal work to do. Organizations as a whole, help your leader out, provide these opportunities, raise a hand in support. This way, not only will your personal growth flourish, but organizational growth, productivity, innovation will begin to skyrocket. Thank you for your time. My name is Richard Mutts, and have a great day.